How do you think about that? Would you launch a full-on virtual girlfriend inside of Hinge?
Certainly not. We are already in a crisis of loneliness. And I think Mark Zuckerberg was just quoted about this. Like, most people don't have enough friends, but, we're going to give them AI chatbots.
How do you compete with that? It is happening.
It's
whether
absolutely
it's good
happening.
or bad.
Yeah.
And you've got Hinge is a harder path.
It really is like a deep personal mission of mine.
Justin McLeod, you're the founder and CEO of Hinge. Welcome to Decoder.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you. I got to tell you, this is one where I kind of feel like Jane Goodall or a sociologist of some kind. Like, I'm old. I'm married to a divorce lawyer. I can't even download this app. It's like too risky, So like I'm watching through the looking glass here a little bit. I asked my younger staff for their Hinge feature requests. Don't worry, I got 1 million of those.
Great. Excited to hear those.
It's like when TaskRabbit's on, I'm like, I booked a TaskRabbit. This is like very different. When was the last time you actually used Hinge as a user?
Over a decade ago.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
What's that like? What's that like trying to run this team? Is it all just data driven for you? Because there's a real element of dog fooding here.
Yes, definitely. We have a lot of single people on our team at Hinge, so there's a lot of internal dog fooding for sure, and a lot of opinions. I think that the relationship is different. So I started the company in 2011, and I was single at the time, and I was single for the first 4 years of Hinge, and then long story, but I got back together with my college girlfriend, and we've been together for the last 10, and married and kids and all.
Did you get back together on Hinge?
It's such a we were together. I tried to get her back. She said no. I started Hinge in response to that. And then someone who met on Hinge inspired me to go back, and like, she was about to get married to someone else. She was living in Switzerland. I flew over a month before the wedding. She like called off her wedding and moved back to New York. Led to the whole reboot of Hinge. There's like, the whole story is very interconnected. You can
I feel like I should throw out my questions. Yeah, we should just do an episode of like Call Her Daddy right now or something, just on that. That sounds very complicated.
Yeah. It's been a ride, and an incredible ride, and very intertwined with Hinge. But back to your question, I think that we can overweight our own personal experience, I think, a bit when we're, especially as the CEO of the company, and what I found over time is that people have a wide array of very diverse experiences. And to some extent, I think it actually helps that I'm not in there overweighting my own, niche feature requests that would matter to me and not to the whole population. So, it's evolved. It's more about helping others than it is about helping myself, which was probably the original idea of Hinge.
How do you think about the connection between what the data is telling you, the data about what Gen Z daters are doing versus millennial daters, which is the cohort you started with, versus the very emotional experiences people have on this platform that are sort of out of your control, right? Like, eventually you got to take the meat sack to the bar and look at the other person and not fuck it up, right? And like, Hinge can't solve that problem, but that's like the heart of the whole enterprise. How do you connect those two in your brain?
This is a very complex, nuanced industry with, it's not, I think sometimes people look at their Hinge feed and they're like, why doesn't this understand my taste as well as my TikTok feed? And people don't really quite understand that, like, people aren't products. They're not infinite copies of everyone. They don't always behave the same. Your videos on TikTok don't have to like you back. There's just a lot of nuance to getting this right. And you're right. I mean, a fair amount of this it comes down to the people on the platform. And so what we're trying to do is obviously like build a great product, but also build a environment and a community where people are encouraged to be intentional and authentic and attract users who are really looking to find their person. So that's definitely the art and the nuance of trying to build a dating app like we've built it.
One of my big criticisms of social media apps generally right now in 2025 is that they've all become marketing platforms in some way.
Yeah.
At the end of the rainbow, Mr. Beast is trying to sell you an energy bar. Like that. Mm-hmm. That's what they're for. And smaller creators are trying to get their first brand deals or whatever it is. But there's a real organization around just marketing. And the platforms try to encourage people to create content for a whole number of reasons. but their reason for being is advertising spend, and then a lot of the content creation on the platform happens for marketing purposes. You can just see it how it goes. Hinge and other dating apps are kind of different, right? You're trying to incentivize content creation. You're trying to get people to talk about themselves, talk to each other, and the goal is kind of to market yourself. Like, how do you divorce that from the actual thing you're trying to do, which is have people like fall in love and into stable relationships?
Yeah, well, it's very much about, what are you optimizing for? And you're right, social media is optimizing for ultimately engagement, retention, time in app. Like that is the lifeblood of their company. So how much time can they get you sucked in? And that is their objective function. And so everything is built around that. And we've seen what the consequences of that is. They're pretty dire. And I think Hinge is almost the exact polar opposite. We're trying to get you to spend less time on your phone and more time out in real life on dates. And, it's interesting. When I started Hinge back in 2011, people very much, as VCs looked at our business, they kind of asked those questions around engagement and retention. They're kind of looking at social media and they're like, what's your daily over monthly? How much people are time spending in app? How many sessions per day? And we were kind of optimizing for those things because that's what VCs were asking about and that's how we were raising money. And then Hinge did a pretty big pivot in 2015 where I let go of half the company, rebooted from scratch because we felt like we really lost our way. We'd become more of a piece of entertainment that was about getting people just more matches and more activity and getting them back every day. And it had lost sight of what we were trying to do, which was people came to us to find a relationship and we weren't really optimized around that anymore. And when we did that pivot back in 2015, the biggest change that we made was we stopped focusing on the competition. We started focusing on the customer, and we made our North Star metric actual great dates. We introduced the We Met survey where we asked people if we suspect they went on a date, if they went on a date, and if it was good. And everything became around optimizing towards that. And it ended up creating a very, very different experience. And that actually became the primary differentiator of Hinge because a lot of the other apps in the industry were based on that, based on engagement and retention and just getting people back, and they were more entertainment platforms, and Hinge became a utility. And we started growing through word of mouth, and now today we're the fastest growing, in fact, only growing major dating app. We were growing 40% last year, and other dating apps are shrinking because I think we've built a very sustainable business model that actually delivers on the value. And we make the lifeblood of our company is getting more users out on dates so they tell their friends and then those people come and join Hinge.
Yeah. The interesting thing about that business model, it's in the tagline of the company. I always laugh when you all put out a press release because it says Hinge, the app designed to be deleted. And there's a little trademark logo every time you say it, which is just very funny. I appreciate that you have to do it, but it just makes me laugh every time. That sort of means you're trying to graduate users, right? You're a utility, you pay until you're done, and then you're out. And that means you constantly have to find new users. Like you have a different kind of churn problem, basically. How do you think about that life cycle?
Yeah, we think about it in terms of good churn. We want people turning off the app for the right reason. We don't want people turning off the app because they gave up too early or because they don't like Hinge. We want people turning off the app because they found someone, ideally on Hinge. And
what does it mean to find somebody on Hinge? Like you're married,
it's different for different people. Like when I started, when we did the reboot, it was our core market was definitely like 25 to 35 and very much people who were, I would say, like looking to find their person and get off the app for most people. And now our fastest growing segment has been like 18 to 25. And they're at a different phase in their life. And it was pretty interesting because that segment started growing almost by surprise to us. But I think what they were attracted to wasn't so much the focus on like long-term relationship, like find your marriage partner today, but it was very much about just the authenticity and vulnerability and intimacy on the platform and moving away from kind of a platform that felt very gamified and very flat to something that felt very human and intentional and authentic. And so we think about our daters as having a journey mindset. Like they're headed in a direction. They're on a journey of self-exploration. They don't want to waste their time on bad dates. but they don't necessarily are looking for their marriage partner today, and that's totally fine. We're just looking to help people get off the app, out on great dates, and forming intimate connection in real life.
But there's a difference between get off the app and go on great dates and delete this thing, right?
Forever,
Like,
yes.
Yeah, like there's some exit ramp that's like very different than the other exit ramp. Not to keep comparing it to social media, but again, I feel like I'm just like viewing this from the outside, so it's all metaphors for me. Mark Zuckerberg is terrified that young audience will just abandon his core, whatever the core social media dynamic is of the time. This is why he bought Instagram. You can read his emails over the course of these trials. He's like, there's another mechanic. I need to buy it before they overtake us. And he keeps going down the line, whether that's stories or reels or whatever the next thing is. You have the same problem, only you don't get to keep the old users on the old mechanic, right? You don't get to run Facebook and buy Instagram. How do you think about reinventing the app for that new, younger cohort that has different dynamics on the internet?
We're just always staying in tune with where culture is going. I think that it's just imperative on us, because you're right, we can't rely on just like a legacy user base. So we have to stay on top of culture, where it's going, continually evolving the app, whether it is right now a big focus is on AI and how we just generally increase the effectiveness of the app in a couple different dimensions. And we're actually finding, for example, right now, how much coaching is becoming really, really important. I think people, especially during the pandemic, a lot of atrophy happened in social skills and people feeling comfortable meeting up with people in real life and how to have those interactions. So helping people create their profiles, write their prompts, things like that. So we're, another big thing that came out during the pandemic actually was more of a focus on voice and adding voice prompts, which I think was, again, moving where culture goes. So we're always making these kinds of tweaks to continually keep the app fresh.
Yeah. Do you feel the same sort of existential pressure? The idea that some cohort of people will delete the app, right? The old millennials will be married or tired or whatever it is they're going to do, and you've got to go get a bunch of new Gen Z users or Gen Alpha users, which is frankly terrifying. How do you think about, okay, we got to break the old model because it's existential for us if we don't capture the younger user? Or is it more of a gradation?
If you look at the history of this, relatively brief history of this industry starting in like the 90s, there's only kind of been one major disruption moment, which was 2012, 2013. And so you had the birth of the industry in like the late 90s, 96, 97, where you had Match and eHarmony come on the scene. And then they kind of dominated from 1996 to about 2014. And it was actually a much smaller niche industry at the time. It was kind of people that older people used, people who felt like they really struggled to find someone in real life. And then you had the mobile dating apps come on because of a few different technologies that kind of started to come online all together. One was mobile, one was the sort of cultural change of everyone having a social media account. One of it was data processing power and moving away from the world of, searching people to a world of like a feed of, relevant people one after another. And that created a pretty big paradigm shift where suddenly technology enabled an entirely new type of experience that it was hard for the old incumbents to mirror. They tried to pivot to mobile, but they couldn't sort of unseat themselves from their way of thinking about the world. It's like very classic disruption problem. And we haven't really seen, I think the next opportunity for that kind of disruption is going to be a big technology shift. We haven't seen that up until very recently, right? So I like VR, AR, things like that, I just didn't see, not until they're very deeply adopted by 70%, 80% of the population is it really going to be something that people start using for dating. AI, I think, is a very different story. And it's unclear at this point whether it becomes a disruptive force for the current players or whether it becomes a more of an evolution because of the obviously Hinge has a tremendous amount of data we can use to train AI models. We're seeing huge gains in our ability to match people up more thoughtfully given the tools. And at the same time, it could introduce very new paradigms for dating.
I want to talk about AI with you, but you mentioned Match, so I think this is a good time to talk about the Decoder questions. You're part of Match Group. You sold to Match Group. Match Group owns all of the dating apps, minus one, which is a little contentious. They don't own Bumble. There's a lawsuit. We can set that aside. What's it like being part of Match Group? When you sold your company, what was that decision like for you?
Honestly, at the time, we were in a tough position as a company. I'd done the reboot, and we were about a year into that reboot experience, and we had not really cracked the code yet. Like there were green shoots there that made me believe and made, I would say, the trained eye believe that there was really something there. But to VCs, they just saw that like, oh, we were popular, and then we tore down our business and we restarted, and now we started to rebuild again. And there wasn't a lot of juice there. So going with a strategic who could recognize the value of what we were seeing, which was massive increases in effectiveness, women coming to the platform in at a much higher proportion than they were using other dating apps. And so that was very interesting to them. And so we received a strategic investment from Match Group. That was in 2017, and they bought the rest of the company, and that gave them a path to buy the rest of the company, which they did at the end of 2018.
What's that structure like inside of Match Group now?
It's evolving. There's a brand new CEO, Spencer, who just started, and I think he's taking a fresh look at some of that. But up until very recently, the company has and still today, really, the company operates pretty independently. Like Hinge, we're in New York. We pretty much have our own space. We have our own product teams, our own engineering teams, our own marketing teams that operate very independently. We share learnings across the platform. We use shared services like accounting and legal and things like that. But for the most part, the company has its own independent culture, has its own independent mission, product roadmaps, marketing strategies, all of that.
You said you shared some central services like accounting and finance. Is there any product or data that you're sharing?
We certainly share learnings, right? Mm-hmm. Like, especially on things that we don't really want to compete on, like safety or monetization or things like that. So there's certainly that. And there's sharing for safety purposes. That's the main ways that we share.
So if you're like a young and carefree single on Tinder and you graduate to Hinge, you don't get to just bring your date along for the ride?
No.
Again, I'm just looking from the outside. Yeah. Tinder's interesting, right? The CEO of Tinder just stepped down. Your new CEO at Match, Spencer, stepped in to run Tinder for a minute. In any normal circumstance, you would be on the attack, right? If Tinder wasn't part of the same company as you, this would be a moment to say, okay, there's some strategic weakness over there. We're going to go get him. We're gonna put the screws. Are you allowed to do that inside a Match Group?
So first of all, I'll just say that we don't really think too much about Tinder as Hinge's competition. We think about them in very different psychographic mindsets. Like Hinge, you come because you want to really take your time, be intentional, be thoughtful, find your person. Tinder has been much more casual, younger, like anything can happen kind of mentality. And so that was like a very intentional portfolio strategy decision that Match made back when they acquired us back in 2017, 2018. So no, we don't think about it like that.
I mean, that's why I asked about the data and the life cycle question, right? There's a time in your life where you might use Tinder. There's a time in your life where you might use Hinge. It seems from the overall umbrella company perspective, you want to move that user around your family of apps, but it doesn't seem like that is actually happening at the top level.
It's a bit, yes, from the outside that would make sense. It's a bit nuanced because there's very different brand reputations. Like people, we like to think of Hinge pretty independently, and I think so do our users.
So there's no pop-up in Tinder that's like, maybe it's time to cool it and download Hinge?
There's not.
Okay, just a feature request for you. What's your org chart like? How is Hinge structured?
That's also been evolving over time, and we're still relatively, by the way, a small company. We have about 350 employees, and we moved from if I think about the evolution of Hinge growing from one person to the first like 150 people, originally it was very centrally run. There was a lot of like very tight coordination, a lot of direction coming directly from me and my executive team. And then as we started to go beyond 100 people, and I would say a lot of the the technology was relatively stable, like social, mobile, big data. How do we keep optimizing and iterating around this? And we became a pretty decentralized organization where we had principles around like pushing decision making down to the lowest levels possible, keeping it really on the front lines. We had pretty independent, cross-functional product teams that would work on their individual little missions or surfaces. We kind of oscillated back and forth between that, and people felt like autonomous, like feeling like they have a lot of autonomy and a lot of was kind of the main ethos of the company. And then I think with AI over the last couple of years and feeling like, whoa, like we really need to make a pretty big shift. Like I said, risk of disruption is high, very big opportunities to shift the product experience in a new direction. It requires now pulling decision-making back in towards the center a bit and giving a lot clearer strategic direction to the team so that we're all working together in concert towards one thing together, because the whole app really has to move together. Different parts of the app have to talk to each other in ways that when we weren't going through much change, it wasn't as essential. That said, we still have very highly cross-functional product teams where product managers sit with dedicated designer, researcher, data scientist, tech lead to attack very like mission-oriented problems.
And when you said surfaces and missions, is that expressed as just the tabs at the bottom of the app? Is that how it's broken down, or is it actual like user journey missions?
That's what I mean. Surfaces versus missions. Like I think we've sort of gone in different directions. It's never really a clear line, one versus the other. Do you own the discover tab where you discover new people, or is your job to help people find the right person? And then you have to think sort of more cohesively about operating across different surfaces or parts of the app. And now we have we think about our teams operating less as individual surface units and more as like part of a cohesive like dating outcomes team where people feel a bit more flexible moving around to different surfaces.
How do you think about assigning product managers to those teams? Because like product managers, at least in my experience, they're like, I own this square and I will mess with this square to make this number go up as much as I can.
Yeah,
so I can mess with all the squares is really hard, right?
Yes, that's why we have strong kind of director or VP levels who oversee an overall mission, like a head of dating outcomes or a head of growth, who's coordinating a set of PMs. And we ask our PMs, their primary identity is as a dating outcomes PM, not as a discover PM or a profile PM or something like that. And while day to day, most of their work may focus on like the profile and identity work, they see themselves as very much operating as part of this team.
That feels like something you evolved to. You also, you're a relatively young founder. I think you founded right out of Harvard Business School. How has your decision-making framework evolved? How do you make decisions?
Yeah, that's also hugely evolved. I mean, everything I've learned through doing all the wrong ways first and then eventually getting to the right way. And when you're a founder and you have a small team of 10, 20, 30 people, you're kind of just making decisions by the seat of your pants, like what feels good, what feels right. You're just using your own gut. As we started to get towards 100 people or so, then we started to move towards a world where what I noticed was I would be making different decisions on different days that weren't always consistent. And it was kind of based on my like mood that day or whatever data was in front of me or what I just last read or whatever. And I was just finding that I was getting pretty inconsistent. And so what I started trying to do is write down my whole management algorithm. So I started putting in a Google Doc, like here's how I make decisions. Here's what I believe is true. And I started publishing that to the whole company so everyone could just read it. So we would just be very transparent about how we made decisions. It was around that time that I think I read Ray Dalio's book, Principles, and the idea of just like getting super dialed on like how do we make decisions? What are our principles? What do we believe is true? And then I opened it up for everyone to just comment on. So we would have long debates in the margins of comments, comment margins of a Google Doc form to think about, everything from our like product strategy principles to whether Hinge should have like a dress code, like just like literally like anything. Like it was all just there so that everyone could debate it. And we had hundreds of principles, and then as the company got even bigger and we got to like 300, 400 people, it's very hard for everyone to, one, you just can't have like these endless debates in Google and like Google Docs anymore. And also what happened was the principles started to stabilize. There wasn't as much debate and churn anymore. And then it actually became an exercise in distilling down what is the most essential things to communicate about what our culture is. And then I worked a couple years ago to actually write an internal book called How We Do Things, which distilled down to like 4 or 5 principles, like what are like the most fundamental things to understand about how we make decisions here. And then individual teams and individual projects will then write their own principles that are more specific to like what they're doing at any given time. But we do have, and one of our meta principles of our 4 now is decide with principles, meaning that like we don't want decisions getting made based on some random person's opinion, that if tomorrow this person leaves the company and we rehire someone else, they're going to come with a completely different set of ideas about how to do something. We really try to maintain that like we define our principles first, we agree on those, and then we see how our work maps to those principles. So that is and I'm happy to talk about what the other 3 principles are if you want, but that's the kind of framework that we use to make decisions now.
Yeah, talk on them a little bit. There's a beautiful website. We'll link to it. It says like scrolly telling. It's well done. But tell people what the other 3 principles are.
Sure. So the next one is love the problem, meaning that what I would notice is we would get an inclination around a user problem, maybe not even validated 100%. Then we'd start getting feature ideas, and we'd be very attached to a feature. And sometimes the feature would even drift and not even be solving the original problem that we were trying to solve. And what I found is that if you spend much more time with the problem, really understanding like what's the why behind the why behind the why, like what's really going on here, can we really get deep into our users, into the data, into our user experiences? And if you want to build breakthrough innovation product features and products, you have to go to that level to get insight that just isn't available at the surface, and then stay really committed to that problem. And that's what, again, allows innovation. Like I think a lot of Silicon Valley and other people I notice will the strategy is just to throw feature ideas against a wall and kind of see what sticks, and let's see if this works. Oh, it doesn't work. Like throw that out. Let's try something else. When you have a lot of deep conviction around a user problem and you really know you want to solve it, then you have the resilience to try and try and try again to solve that problem, even if your first or second iteration doesn't make it. And so the first, like one of the most foundational is love the problem. Like fall in love with the problem, don't fall in love with the solution, and be willing to give up the solution at any given time if it's not solving the core problem that we're trying to solve. So that is love the problem. Next is keep it simple, meaning that I think the best solutions are always the most elegant solutions. That overall, we want to keep the product very simplistic and minimal. Like our colors are black and white. If you look at the Hinge product today, it's just like, it's very clean. It's very simple. We're always stripping away features that don't make sense. And there's just recognizing that there's complexity. There's like cost of complexity every time you add a feature. So even if you add a feature, if it's only marginally beneficial, the cost of the complexity and maintenance of maintaining that feature versus the marginal benefit it adds is will end up gunking up the app over time and slowing you down over time, which is a hard conversation to have with product managers because they'll work for months on a feature and they'll ship it and they'll be like, yeah, and it didn't harm the user base and it like, we like it. And, it even moved this metric over here by 2%. And you're like, well, the cost of complexity is high. And so like we need to focus on things that are actually going to have major impact.
Are you all the way at 2 features out for every feature in? Do you think about it that way? I know some founders do.
I haven't heard that before. I don't necessarily think that way, but I do just think in constantly reevaluating like what's in the app, what needs to stay, and having a high bar for when you build a new feature. Does it actually accomplish what we need it to accomplish? And is it worth the complexity cost? So that's the third one now. And then the last one is tend to trust. I just find that like trust is the lifeblood of an organization. You have to do a lot of work to proactively cultivate and tend trust by creating strong interpersonal relationships, by creating lots of opportunity for transparency at the organization. Like we have always been very, very transparent about where the organization is. So much so, in fact, that we had to make all Hinge employees Match Group insiders so they couldn't trade Match Group stock except during trading windows because we would be so transparent about where we were, what our financial position was. Like everyone should know that all the way down to, any position at the company. So that I think is also that trust building that you create both interpersonally and from the leadership down to the rest of the organization, I think is absolutely essential and just saves you a lot of headache when it comes to internal politics and all those types of things.
Let's put this into practice. You obviously made a big decision to refocus on AI. How did that come about? Did you wake up one day and say, "Oh boy, it's happening"? Was it Match Group put out a press release with OpenAI saying we're going to work together? Did you read that and say, "I got to figure this out"? How did this come about?
Certainly, the release of like whatever that version of ChatGPT that kind of like sent shockwave through the world was a pretty big wake up call. I mean, obviously, we'd already been using machine learning and things like that in trust and safety and our algorithms and our recommendation algorithms. But I think it was the sort of shot across the bow that came from the release of ChatGPT, whatever it was, 3.0, that really woke us up to the potential capabilities here and realizing that like this could be a major disruptive force in a way that we hadn't seen really since we started Hinge. And it took a bit for us to get our strategy clear about like what our thesis is on how this is going to affect matching and dating in the future. It wasn't immediately apparent, but I think we have a pretty clear thesis now, and we started to organize the company around that thesis.
What's the thesis?
That there's 2 main vectors that AI is going to impact dating and matchmaking, and it's essentially I think the big story is it's going to move much closer to the experience of working with a personal matchmaking service and much less an experience of feeling like you are joining a social platform on your own, kind of trying to find your person. So what does that mean? 2 big pieces. One is personalized matching, and the other is effective coaching. So the personalized matching front is we should be able to move much further beyond the world we are in today, which is our users speaking to us in essentially Morse code with their likes and passes, trying to communicate to us what they like and what they don't like. The idea that they would be able to speak much more directly to us about like, here's what I'm looking for, here are my values, here's my personality, here are my interests. Us being able to listen to them and their preferences, and even integrate things like relationship science to understand what types of people are compatible and what types of people are not long-term compatible, and introduce you to a much more curated, higher quality, less quantity list of people where you have much more trust that if you're introducing me to this person, then this is probably someone that I want to go out with. We've already seen big gains, by the way, just by using the power of LLMs to drive more of our recommendation systems using the data we already have. But we just released a new algorithm a couple months ago that increased matches and dates by like 15%. And that's just using the same data. But now we can start to use much more of that unstructured, nuanced data, people talking to us in their own voices about who they are and what they want, that we can use very effectively. So that's the whole personalized matching front. And then there's the effective coaching front, which is a lot of our users struggle to get out on that first date, and they often don't know why. And I've got, I have friends that are incredible people, and they'll ask me to take a look at their Hinge profile, and I'm like flabbergasted. Like, this is their attempt at like putting themselves out there. And so we're starting with pretty basic things, training a model, for example, on, Hinge has these prompts, which are short questions designed to get you in a conversation. And you put them on your profile. And a lot of people write great responses to prompts, but a whole lot of people write not so great, often just like one-word responses to these prompts that don't work. And we found it's just incredibly effective to have trained a model on good prompt responses and give people feedback to ask them to, it's mostly like, can you say more about that? Here's,
Yeah. Don't just put no in this
be a
field.
little bit more specific and tell a little bit of a story and find and help, good answers kind of invite another question back or get a conversation going. And so we can give people those nudges so they write good prompts, so that they choose good photos. If we notice, we have a team called Hinge Labs, which is always looking at why some people succeed, why some people don't on the app. And some of it is, again, building product features that help solve those problems. But part of it is just giving guidance and notes to people about how they could be using the product better. And we traditionally have published those in date reports. We publish them to the press. We put them in the help center. But people just, for the most part, don't read those. But the idea that we could take this body of knowledge we have about how to succeed on Hinge and then look at how our users are using Hinge and then deliver the right piece of advice at the right time to the right user, I think is going to be pretty transformative for a lot of people.
There's a pretty fine line between that and what I see lots of people doing all day long already, which is just chalking at ChatGPT, just hanging out. We had the CEO of Replica on the show, Eugenia. She was like, my plan is, people are going to date AI bots that will coach them up into being fully formed people, and then we'll release them into the dating pool, and they will have confidence and self-assuredness. Again, a fine line between we're prompting them and coaching them inside of Hinge, and we're coaching them a different way in a more self-contained ecosystem. How do you think about that? Would you launch a full-on virtual girlfriend inside of Hinge?
Certainly not. I have lots of thoughts about this. I think there's actually quite a clear line between providing a tool that helps people get better at something or do something that, and then there's a line when it becomes, this thing is trying to become your friend. It's trying to pretend, like mimic, like it has emotions. It's trying to create emotional connection with you. That, I think, is really playing with fire. I think that we are already in a crisis of loneliness and a loneliness epidemic. And if you look at, it's a complex issue, and it's baked into our culture, and it goes back before the internet. But if you look at just since 2000, over the last 20 years, the amount of time that people spend together in real life with their friends has dropped by 70%, young people. And it's been almost completely displaced with the time spent staring at screens. And as a result of that, we've seen massive increases in mental health issues, and people's loneliness, and anxiety and depression. And I am highly, highly concerned about people who believe, and I think Mark Zuckerberg was just quoted about this, like, most people don't have enough friends, but we're going to give them AI chatbots, that believe that AI chatbots can become your friend. I think that's honestly an extraordinarily reductive view of what a friendship is like someone being there to say all the right things to you at the right moment. Having a friend is as much about, the most rewarding parts of being in a friendship are being able to be there for someone else, to risk and be vulnerable, to actually just share experiences with other conscious entities. So I think that while it will feel good in the moment, like junk food basically to experience someone who says all the right things and is available at the right time, it ultimately, just like junk food, will make people feel over time like less healthy, more drained, and will displace human relationships that they should be out cultivating in the real world.
How do you compete with that? Because that is the other thing that is happening. It is happening.
It's
whether
absolutely
it's good
happening.
or bad.
Yeah. It's
And
absolutely
you've got
happening.
Hinge is, what you're offering a harder path. And so you say like we got to get people out on dates. Like I honestly wonder, based on the younger folks I know, sometimes they're just like, I just want to leave the house. Like I'd rather just talk to this computer, right? Like I have too much social pressure just leaving the house in this way. That's what Hinge is promising to do. How do you compete with that? Do you take it head on? Are you marketing that directly?
Yeah, I'm starting to think about it very much about taking it head on. I mean, we want to continue at Hinge to champion human relationships, real human to human in real life relationships, because I think they are an essential part of the human experience and they're essential to our mental health. It's not just because I run a dating app and, obviously it's important that people continue to meet. It really is like a deep personal mission of mine, and I think it's absolutely critical that someone is out there championing this, because it's always easier to race to the bottom of the brainstem and offer people junk products that maybe sell in the moment but leave people worse off. That's the entire model that we've seen from what happened with social media, and I think AI chatbots could be, frankly, much more dangerous in that respect. So, what we can do is to become more and more effective and help support people more and more to make it as easeful as possible to go out and do the harder thing, and the riskier thing, which is to go out and form real relationships with real people who can let you down and who might not always be there for you, because it ultimately is a much more nourishing and enriching experience for people. And we can also champion and raise awareness as much as we can. I mean, that's like why I'm, another reason why I'm here today talking with you is because I think it's important for people to be putting the counter perspective, that we don't just reflexively think AI chatbots can be your friend and not think too deeply about what that really implies and what that really means. And if you think about it, I think about it like analogous to, we keep going back to junk food, but like people had to start waking up to the fact that like this was harmful. We had to do a lot of campaigns to educate people that like drinking Coca-Cola and eating fast food is like detrimental to your health over the long term. And then as people became more aware of that, a whole personal wellness industry started to grow up. And now that's obviously like a huge industry, and people spend a lot of time focusing on their diet and nutrition and other types of, and their mental health and all these other things. And I think similarly, we need social wellness needs to become a category, thinking about not just how do I get this kind of junk social experience of social media where I get fed outrage news and celebrity gossip and all that stuff, but I actually start, how do I start building a sense of social wellness where I can build enriching, intimate connection with important people in my lives?
The connection between the wellness industry and the rise of social media is a whole other podcast, and maybe a PhD thesis. There's a whole lot there to unpack. I take your point, though, right, that maybe using our phones in healthier ways is the future. It will make us better, and that will be a reaction to the negativity that we see from phones today. Literally, as we speak, I'm sure Elon Musk and Donald Trump are continuing to tweet at each other in an unhealthy way for maybe the future of the entire planet. But you've got to use AI today, right? You have prompt feedback running in the app today. You're helping people pick better photos. The flip side of that is, well, they might just use AI to generate the content. Can you detect it if your prompt feedback says, hey, that's not a good answer, and someone runs away to Gemini or ChatGPT and comes up with a better answer that doesn't actually reflect them?
I think about this kind of like, extreme photo filters, which used to be popular in Instagram back in the day, which is that ultimately you are going to have to go meet up with this person on a real date. And so you want yourself to come through as best that it can, because obviously like you're not going to bring ChatGPT on your date with you.
I'm worried about this. I want to say that I'm worried about this.
And so it's just not it's not a winning strategy. That said, do people ask advice and little tweaks? They do it today. They ask their friends, like, how should I respond to this text message or whatever. So in some sense, I don't see it that differently, because you will have to meet up with this person eventually and show
Would
up
you
as the
add
real
that
you.
kind of feedback inside of Hinge? Hinge obviously has messaging features. Are you going to add a little coach into the messaging feature to say, hey, don't be a dick, right? Like, because you can. That's
Well,
what your friends help you
that
do.
already exists. That's called "Are
Right.
You Sure?" That's AI driven to make sure that people send inappropriate messages. But yeah, again, the right nudge at the right time. Because I think if we build the right tools within Hinge that are appropriate for dating, then people will then use it less to like run out to ChatGPT to use it in ways that probably are less appropriate. Nudging people to say, hey, you guys have been chatting for a bit. Did you know that most people, after they exchange this many messages, usually just go on and move to a date? Or, hey, it seems like the conversation has died. Here's like something interesting that you may not have noticed on their profile that you can ask about. Little things like that, certainly.
One of the interesting dynamics here is you'll add more and more AI to the digital experience people have with each other to make them perform better or act better or be more interesting, whatever it is. And then they'll go on a date, and then they might leave your platform, right? They might switch to iMessage or call each other on the phone. I don't think Gen Z is calling each other on the phone. They'll do something else. They'll go on Discord. How do you bring that experience along for the ride to say, we're going to continue to stay here and help mediate you and coach you through this relationship?
I think we're not there yet. We still have a lot of work to do just to get people out to the first date. And at the same time, I do think there's actually a lot of opportunity to help coach people through that experience, how to show up on a first date, what to talk about on a first date, how to build intimacy over time, how to ask about the right things to determine compatibility. So I think there are definitely opportunities for that. It's not on the 2025 roadmap, but certainly something I'm thinking about.
Do you worry that people are going to just upload like full AI avatars onto Hinge and catfish each other to death?
We have a very robust trust and safety team that is
Yeah.
thinking 2-3 steps ahead about how to mitigate things like that.
I have spent too much time talking about watermarks and AI and synth ID, and there's like lots of episodes of the show that are deep in the AI watermarks game, and it has effectively come to nothing so far. There's just a lot of problems there. Are you like in it to say, okay, we can detect a full AI photo here?
There's so many signals when it comes to creating a dating profile, from the phone number you use and the email you use, the your IP address, all these things like that. That like we have like a very multifaceted way of determining the authenticity of profiles. I'll say that.
Running these models is costly. There's lots and lots of different kinds of models you can run at different costs. Are you using lots of models? Are you sending everything to GPT-4? How does this work for you?
We use different models for different things. Sometimes we build them internally completely. Sometimes we're using, I think it's, as you said, public, that we have a relationship with OpenAI. So it's just, we use different things for, and are always balancing cost and performance and ability to build in-house versus not.
I'm very curious about what the frontier models can do versus what the cheaper, more efficient models can do. Have you seen that shift over time as you've started to deploy these tools?
I mean, one, we've seen the cost of the frontier models like just decline precipitously, which is pretty interesting to watch. But I'll say that like there are models, even like the prompt feedback model is like a very, very specific and discrete model that we can essentially mostly build kind of internally to understand.
Do you run that in your cloud, in your data center? Or are you running that on people's phones?
Don't actually know. I think that's on our data. That's in the cloud. I'm almost positive that's in the cloud. That one.
The reason I'm asking is to do any of this well, you need more and more data from people, right? And you're kind of asking them to generate more and more data. Like, that's not a good answer. Tell me more about yourself is more data. And it's data that you're now storing. It's particularly data about gender, sexuality, dating preferences. That stuff, like the government suddenly has like a very unusual and somewhat threatening interest in. Are you worried about that the Trump administration or some future administration would show up and say, tell me all of the transgender people on your platform?
Obviously, we have like very, very sensitive data that we have very, very clear protections around. And we haven't seen anything like that.
So you haven't had any of those incoming requests yet?
No.
The Trump administration has also said they're going to start scanning social media profiles for references to Palestine, for comments about Trump himself. When you talk about matching people and values, like those things come up. Has there been any request for Hinge profiles from DHS or ICE or any of these other parts of the Trump administration that are doing this kind of social media scanning?
No.
Yeah. The reason I'm asking is the amount of data you might collect that is very, very personal seems like a rich target. Have you thought about the planning for how big of a target this might become as you prompt people to input more and more data with AI?
Certainly, I think we'll have to handle those things as they come. We're obviously in like a very uncertain time right now, but I will say that like primarily we are a platform about creating intimate one-to-one connection. And that's people's very private lives where they should be able to express themselves in the way that they see fit and describe themselves and their own sexuality and their own gender and the way that they need to do that. And I view that as absolutely sacred and fundamental to our mission. And people feeling safe to do that is absolutely critical. So those would be our very highest priorities. And I also imagine not top priority for relative to social media where people are posting and blasting thousands, millions of people with ideas. Like this is just, our platform is not about one-to-many posting and conversation. It's about intimate one-to-one connection and one-to-one conversations.
I think I would warn you that having a data pool of that kind might make you a target. I'm curious how that plays out over time, particularly in this administration. There's some platform dynamics here as well. Like iOS and Android exist. They are platforms. They are also themselves rich targets for the government. Overall, there's a push for the platforms to do age verification themselves. There's laws now in certain states. There's laws in other countries. The Apples and the Googles of the world have pushed back against this in various ways. Do you think they need to do it? Do you think that it's at the iOS and Android level that need to do the age verification? Because this is a core component of bringing people onto Hinge. It's not for children.
It's certainly not. Yeah, we're 18 plus, and we have our own age verification methods. But yeah, we've been pushing for these platforms to do age verification themselves because they have even more robust ways to do it.
Their arguments in response, when you listen to Apple and Google push back against these laws, is that it would be too hard. It would create some sort of censorship regime that, the app vendors need to be liable for this. Have you seen any movement in that dynamic? I mean, this is I think at the highest level, this is one of the big dynamics of how we might regulate platforms in the future.
I am not, I'm staying much closer to the product development and the where we're going with AI right now than I am to that.
Yeah. Your monetization is obviously Hinge Premium. I think it's $55 a month. There's another tier that's $45 a month. The big news in the platform world is that Apple is no longer allowed to prevent alternative payment systems. Match Group in particular has been leading this fight. It's in all the press releases. Has that changed the dynamics of Hinge for you?
I don't know if it changes the dynamics, but it's certainly going to, having more flexibility and giving users options to be able to pay different ways, I think is good for everybody.
Have you launched an alternative payment service yet?
We have not. Hinge
Are you
has
going
not.
to?
Yes.
How soon?
Certainly by the end of the year.
Is that going to be a Match Group payment service or a Hinge payment service? How do you think about
that? These are things that we're figuring out, but most likely Hinge.
That would return somewhere on the order of 15 or 30%, depending on how the billing works for you at your scale and recurring subscriptions and all that. Is that just going to be pure margin? You're just going to get the money back?
I think it changes the equation on many fronts, right? Like it allows us to invest more in the company. It changes how we would price. So no, I think it could result in lower prices. It could result in more investment in the company, or it could result in more margin. It's probably some combination of all three of those. Walk
me through Match Group has been doing this fight for a long time, and you're already describing how you might change pricing or the lifetime value of customers. The decision Epic fights this fight for like 5 years. At the very end, the judge says, I'm very mad at you. You can't do this anymore. Did you immediately start making plans that day, or were you like, this is going to get appealed, we have to wait?
There's been back and forth and appeals and stays and things like that. I think just a couple days ago the appeal was denied, so I think that made it pretty real.
Yeah. So, I mean, and just to put the decision making into practice, did you say that day we need an alternative payment system?
Certainly, the day that the original ruling came out, we started to plan.
What does that planning look like? Is it, I'm going to call it Stripe. Put us in your shoes. Like that happens. Someone comes to you and you say, okay, we need to start to plan. Walk us through that moment.
I mean, just like anything else at Hinge, I think that we stay grounded in our principles. We look at the big picture. We look at the teams and the roadmaps and the things they're focused on right now, and we think like, does this new information change? Like, and as we look at our growth team, does it make sense to build the next monetization or expansion feature? Or does it make sense to pivot resources over to this thing? And given, as you said, the 15 to 30% gain that's on the table, it's pretty high priority. Yeah.
There's an ecosystem of companies that might be building this stuff more centrally, that might be charging different rates. I'm kind of excited about that. Like, it's wonky and boring. There's a reason we're ending the episode.
Yeah,
with a
whole new industry, I think will emerge. Well, not an industry, but certainly a suite of services will emerge around this to allow people to manage subscription payments, cancellations. Like, it's certainly nuanced.
But at the end of that, what you want is rates to come down. Where do you think the rates should be? Because I know no one has ever thought they should be at 15 or 30%. Where do you think they should be with a little more market competition?
I mean, when you stack the credit card payment processing fees on top of the fees around customer service and all the sort of nuance of managing this, yeah, but I do think it comes down to like the 5 to 10% range.
When you think about recovering that, up to 20%, are you thinking, okay, I can use this to lower prices and grow, or I have to build many, many more AI features to compete against the coming onslaught of AI chatbots?
I think we're very, very focused on innovating for the future. Like I said, it changes the equation, so it's on all three fronts. It's lower prices, it's higher margin, and it's more investment in the company, and but it certainly gives us major opportunities to invest in the core product experience at a time when there's massive disruption. So it's a particularly critical time to be doing that.
Yeah. Last question. There's a lot of talk about platform shifts. You've talked about platform shifts here, right? People might be using Hinge differently because they have AI tools or because the AI tools are helping them find one another more efficiently or better. A lot of the platform shift I hear about is, we're going to have new devices. We're going to have new form factors. They are just going to talk to ChatGPT in the bar. Maybe we'll just have agents that represent us, and they'll go on dates for a while and come back and say, you should go on this date with this other person we found on Hinge because the agents have fallen in love, and now you just have to not screw it up. That kind of takes the screen away. That takes your surfaces and your missions and puts them in a totally different place. How are you thinking about that level of shift? Is it even on your radar?
Yeah, I'm thinking about it right now, and I think we overuse the form factor of our mobile devices right now for all kinds of things that it doesn't need to be used for, and I think a lot of those will be siphoned off into some other form factor. Especially, I think audio and voice is going to be a very big piece of it. But I don't think that means that the form factor completely goes away. There are things that you need visual cues and references for, where a screen is still going to be the dominant form factor, and at least a piece of the dating equation is going to be that, for sure.
Yeah. Do you think we'll get to a place where people's agents are just dating each other and then reporting back?
No, I don't really think so. I think there are much better.
Isn't that what's already kind of happening in the matchmaking algorithm? Like, to be in a very reductive way, isn't that?
I think in a very abstractive, reductive way, you could say that, but that's not really what's happening. Like, we're not simulating dates. I think it's a very expensive and inefficient way to do something that actually is much more straightforward.
Yeah. There's just a part of me that says you're going to have some competitor that attempts this to happen, and we will all have to contend with it.
Yeah, I just think that that's a bit of a red herring for trying to map someone's psyche and guess how they're going to be, and then judge how the date. That adds a lot of complexity when actually you can just talk to people very, very directly about who they are and what they're looking for and what matters to them, and compare that against someone else and what they describe, and actually make a lot of good connections and clear understandings to figure out who should match with who.
Yeah. Justin, this
Yeah.
this has been great. Tell people what's next for Hinge. What should they be looking for?
It really is the evolution of the product. Like, I think that the shift to AI is going to be bigger than the shift to mobile for the industry. I think that we're going to be able to do things that, if you think big picture about what mobile did, it just made the process more approachable, faster, more fun, easier, more approachable. But it was still the same fundamental experience of just, cruising for people, trying to find someone that, based on very limited information, matching with them, trying to figure it out, going on a date, realizing this is not your person, trying to find the next date, moving to much closer to a world of really deep understanding of compatibility, being able to zero people in on the right person very quickly. It's going to be a very transformative experience that I think is going to very much change people's understanding and perception of the industry. So I'm really looking forward to the next couple of years, because I think that we will see more change than we've seen ever in the industry before.
Yeah, we'll have to have you back to check in on how it's going. Thanks so much
Great.
for being on Decoder.
Yeah, thank you.
I'd like to thank Justin McLeod for taking time to speak with me on Decoder, and thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like Decoder, please share it with your friends and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Decoder is a production of The Verge and part of the Vox Media Podcast Network. We'll see you next time.